Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Oh, good. Smells great in here, and it's not the drying beds. Smells great. Good afternoon, and welcome to our annual celebration of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which I will also refer to as AAPI. Thank you. And as always, I'm going to ask all of us to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll carry on. I pledge allegiance. My name is Teresa Flynn, and I'm the Vice President of the MWRD's Board of Commissioners. I would like to acknowledge my colleagues that are here today and also that serve on the board with me. We have President Carrie Steele, who will be here in a bit. We have the Chair of Finance, Marcelino Garcia, Commissioner Yumika Brown, and present we have our Commissioner Precious Brady Davis, so give a wave. We have Commissioner Ada Corral Sepulveda here as well, Commissioner Cam Davis, Commissioner Beth McElroy Kirkwood in the back, Commissioner Sharon Waller, and our interim executive director, John Murray. He is here as well. Thank you for all taking time out of your busy day to be here for this special occasion. We appreciate you. And this year's theme of AAPI is A Legacy of Leadership and Resilience. The origin of AAPI Heritage Month dates back to the 95th Congress, when 5 joint resolutions were introduced proposing that a week in May be designated to commemorate the accomplishments of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. But a week wasn't enough time to give the proper recognition to the role of Asian Pacific Americans that have played a role in American society with their contributions to the sciences, the arts, industry, government, and commerce. On May 14th of 1991, the United States Congress passed a joint resolution recognizing May as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And today, we continue the honor to legacies and contributions of the AAPI communities in America. Here at the district, we designate each May as a permanent symbol of our appreciation and gratitude for Asian American and Pacific Islanders and their valuable work at all levels, including our very own agency. So with that, we also have a very diverse population here in this meeting tonight. I'm so happy that you guys came out here for this. We're very fortunate to have with us today an established landscape architect and artist, Ernest Wong, principal of Site Design Group, who exemplifies an Asian American leader whose work impacts our communities and environment throughout the Chicagoland area. Ernie is also a founding member of the Asian American Chamber of Commerce of Illinois, and his impressive full bio can be found on the first page of your program. Ernie is always forging forward to serve and build up new leaders. In that sense, he is a true example of creating a legacy of leadership and resilience, and we are honored to have him speak here today. We look forward to the special MWRD of his TED Talk. So thank you, Ernie, for joining us. So please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Flynn. How do I do this again? Somebody told me. There we go. Hi, folks. Thank you so much for coming out today. Good afternoon, right? It's really appreciate this opportunity. It is AAPI month, and it's been really an incredible opportunity to get out and been kind of all over the city talking about AAPI month and all of the things that are happening these days. But today I want to start out with a little short thing. I don't know whether anybody's heard of this thing called Pichukacha or Pekakucha. It is a style of presenting which was developed by a bunch of architects in Tokyo, and I think it was 1976, who decided that people weren't coming to their shows because they were getting so bored. So this is one of the ways of doing it. 20 seconds, 20 slides. That was it. So we're going to do this. We're going to be over in like 4 minutes. um, I didn't, at first I was really afraid to do something like this, and some of my staff ended up doing it. And there was this one young woman who came to, who was from University of Illinois, who had come to our office, and English was her second language. And she ended up doing this presentation in front of like hundreds of people, and she knocked it out of the ballpark. So I was I was shamed into doing this because I was like, oh my God, she was killer. So let me start with this. I'm a landscape architect. I discovered this profession midway through college while wandering back and forth from architecture to wilderness survival to the hospitality industry. Actually, I always wanted to be Smokey the Bear, but that never really happened. Watching people in public spaces was way more interesting. I'm also a Chinese American that's still discovering my heritage and culture. In this country, we have a short and controversial history. Obviously, we still have that history going on. My parents immigrated to this country in the late 1940s to gain an education, hoping to go back to China and help rebuild their country after World War II. My dad was born in the Haiphong County of Guangdong Province in southern China. His father was a landowner who was assassinated during the early communist movement in China. The village was burned to the ground. My father, at age 7, escaped to Hong Kong with one of his father's bodyguards. This is his mother and his brother, who he didn't see for over 50 years. My mother was born in Hong Kong. Her father was one of Dr. Sun Yat-sen's financiers during the end of the Qing dynasty in China. Her mother was a principal of a girls' school in Guangzhou. At age 6, my mother was an orphan. She made it through her childhood, eventually making it to Duke University's medical school. I always look at this photograph and, just to remind myself of the struggles that she had growing up. My parents met in Durham, North Carolina, and got married at Duke University's chapel. My mom still claims that she only married my dad because he had a car. Then again, being the only 2 Chinese people in North Carolina in the early 50s, you probably needed a car to get out. My mom, she's such a gold digger. My dad came to this country because he had a fellowship to study with Frank Lloyd Wright. He couldn't get his visa out of China that year, so the following year, 1948, he gets his visa, was on his way up to Taliesin, and he stops in Chicago, and he runs into a German architect named Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, and he never left. Mies is now known as the father of modern architecture. Mies's English and my dad's English were both pretty bad, so they sat around drawing and detailing Mies's projects. That's my dad on the left and Mies on the right at the iconic Farnsworth House while it was under construction. Mies may have been complaining to my dad about Edith, who was apparently one of those clients. In 1959, my father started his firm, YC Wong and Associates, capitalizing on the acclaim of the award-winning atrium homes in the Hyde Park neighborhood. He followed that up with several other acclaimed projects, earning his fellowship with the AIA in 1975. His practice made a mark in Chicago housing, never sacrificing quality for cost. My mom was working at Michael Reese Hospital, then on to the University of Illinois Chicago Medical School. The kids were growing up in Kenwood, trying to figure out their lives in the 1970s, turbulent time in the United States and in Chicago. Fitting in was always interesting because we were neither black nor white in this urban neighborhood. I discovered entrepreneurial means to keep things real. My older brother is a fashion photographer. My older sister is an artist. My younger sister manages jazz artists in New York. My folks are pretty disappointed. When they got together with their Chinese friends, they pretended that we weren't their kids. No doctor, no lawyer, no accountant, no engineer. Their kids weren't really Chinese. Dad was an exacting man. When I began working for him, he would make me draw every brick on the building elevation. English bond, every 6th row with a header course. If my lines weren't straight or I overshot an intersection or the lines didn't meet, he would tear up the entire sheet and make me redraft the entire elevation. When Robert and I started our practice, we held to those principles of accurate and precise work, quality construction specifications, deliberate and careful design standards. When we had the opportunity to design Pingtom Park 25 years ago, we did our best to uphold those standards and raise the bar of excellence. A week before the park opened, I walked my dad through the park explaining the design. He looked down and he never said a word. He didn't have to say what he thought. He was pissed that I became a landscape architect and was even more appalled that I would attempt to design a Chinese park when I knew nothing about the culture. He was right. His disappointment was deafening. He passed away a year later. When I earned my fellowship with the American Society of Landscape Architects in 2014, I refrained from telling my mom the news. When I finally told her weeks later, there was a silence followed by, "What took you so long? Your father received his when he was 45. Why are you so slow?" Maybe it's a Chinese thing. I'll never be good enough. I'll never receive the approval from my parents that I'll carry that chip on my shoulder for the rest of my life. I'll always be compared to Yakum Lee, now head of the medical school at University of California, San Francisco. That's me on the far left looking for some other parents to adopt me. When Denise and I started our family, we would expose our kids to a lot of things. Play sports, make music, get to know your cousins, ride public transportation, go to public school, walk in the woods, get some thug friends, eat different foods, sing in a choir. One of the things we obviously forgot to teach them was to act their age. They were really cute when they were kids. I tried not to yell or beat them too much, and I never understood the dynamic with my dad and them. He was so gentle and caring. He never ripped up their drawings, made them peel shrimp till their hands bled. Why didn't they get that tough love that everybody talks about? I never got to the Farnsworth house when my dad was alive. I finally went a year after he passed away. I was blown away by the beauty and the elegance of that design. I was struck by the colors of the leaves and the gentleness of the land. I tried to imagine what me and my father were thinking as the structure went up. My kids are adults now. They're certainly not following in another generation of design. One is a mechanical engineer. The other one wants to track serial killers with FBI. I am proud of them that they're making their own way through life. Their childhood was not as disruptive as mine, and it certainly wasn't as harsh as what my parents endured. They're very much more sensitive to what's at stake now, a very polarized country, climate change, and a quickly changing geopolitical environment. They're smart and their friends are smart. Whether they can save the world has yet to be determined, but they'll still need our help and our support. So I guess I should start by telling them that I love them. So we're going to do this. I'm not going to bore you guys to death, but I do need to give you a little brief history of landscape architecture. I'm going to start by acknowledging that we are on the traditional territory of the Peoria, Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Kickapoo tribes, which used to be their land until the Europeans came and started taking things. And the stewardship of land really became very different. And landscape architecture was born out of designing estates for royalty. And so, these were the kinds of things that everybody wanted to have, and but only a few could afford. But over the years, a guy named Frederick Law Olmsted ended up designing Central Park. And this is for the people. This is a park for the people and a place of respite for people who were working in all these big cities. Over the years, modernism came and landscape architecture changed to kind of accommodate a lot of the buildings that were being developed. And so some of the landscape architect greats that people may or may not know about, Dan Kiley, who did the Art Institute Gardens, actually, if you haven't been over there, you got to go see that. And it's a place unto its own. Richard Haig did the Gaswork Parks in Seattle, Washington, and Lawrence Halpern did work all over the country, including the Roosevelt Memorial in Washington, D.C. Martha Schwartz was a trailblazer in her own right, doing very whimsical designs throughout the world. And then we started developing these things, these huge signature parks on structure. So you all are familiar with Millennium Park, and there's a dozen other parks on structure throughout the country that have been really recognized as economic development initiators for a lot of big cities. So how do landscape architects change the world? And we look at our profession very differently. We look at how we become leaders, and they don't teach us in school. We talk about discipline, which is really, really hard, especially if you have kids now. Discipline is really hard to come by. But we are still curious. And I always encourage folks to continue to be curious, because if you aren't, you're going to be standing still. The world is changing very, very quickly. And throughout all of that, you have to practice. And practice makes perfect, is what they say. So why do they call it practice? So even as I've had this firm for 35 years, we continue to practice. There's nothing that is ever completely right. We have to continue to thrive to continue to make it right. And that's where that 10,000 hours continues to be very, very relevant. So 2023, Homeland Security recommended landscape architecture as a STEM discipline, which is actually really interesting because we deal with not only civil engineering and water runoff and climate change and all of those other things, but we also deal with the arts as well. So a little bit about our practice. You may know a little bit about us and the work that we do. I told you about Pingtown Park. Here's a few others. We started the pandemic with 26 people, and now we're up to 60 people, which is pretty incredible. And actually all over the country. My partners right now are in Tokyo. Right now, we're thinking about starting a office in Tokyo to do some work in Asia. And we continue to hire some really bright and enthusiastic people, young people who really take this profession seriously. But they're not all landscape architects. They're also architects or horticulturists, arborists. We have planners on board. So it's this variety of not only the discipline, but also this variety of different practices. So, you may be familiar with some of these: the 31st Street Harbor, Lakeshore East, Pingtown Park, Mary Bartlemay Park in the West Loop, Palmisano Park, I'll talk about that in a little bit, and Pullman, we just finished up a couple of years ago down on the far south side. All of our projects we look at with these kind of 5 principles, if you will. They're ecological, they're accessible, they're buildable, they're maintainable, and they all have to do with the community that they're within. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this because it's an incredible program that has been really evolving over the years, taking these asphalt parking lots and school lots and turning them into something really amazing. And that's, not only, as you know, helping dealing with the runoff, but also capturing the runoff from actually outside of those boundaries of the school. So, it becomes almost like a sponge. And those play spaces that we're developing are really incredible, and they start to teach kids about the environment, and they teach kids about how, the things that are going on with water and the things that are going on with soil and how that affects plants. But it's also a time for them to play. We also do a lot of other work. This is a project that we started out doing with the Esther Gates done in on the Woodlawn area, Dorchester Arts and Housing Collaborative. And he took this set of housing and turned it into artists' buildings. And as the landscape architects, we decided we want to do something that really encouraged the community to come onto this property and really learn about the arts. And so this became really super exciting for us. McKinley Park, we took a vacant lot and turned it into this play space. And, we couldn't call this a playground because there are all kinds of standards and requirements. So we ended up calling it's a nature garden. And just hope happens that kids have an opportunity to play a little bit and learn about water and how that all comes to be. The Field Museum is one of our favorite projects. That's what it used to look like. Remember that? To what it is now. And so, these were the renderings, and we always say, oh, nothing is going to really turn out like the renderings, but it did. And it's really, really exciting to see that the Field Museum was actually able to bring their mission from inside the building to the outside. And so this continues on. Some of the older folks in here, you'll see these sculpture pieces on the side. Anybody want to take a guess as to who's that sculptor? You'll never guess. I was shocked. And I'll give you a hint. It's a musician. Anybody? Herb Alpert? The trumpet player. I was like, really? Herb Alpert did these? Anyway. Palmisano Park, 300-foot hole in the ground that the city used for, 30-some years, filling it up. And it was incredible. When we first got out there, it was like, again, hole in the ground, and city trucks were coming in, dumping construction debris into there. And we go out to the community, we're like, oh, what would you like in this park? And it's right next to McGowan Park, so they have all the ball fields and everything there. They're like, we don't care. Can you just take down that fence? And we're like, okay. And it has now become 27 acres, by the way, that's the same size as Millennium Park. 27 acres of this place that you walk in there, you have no idea you're in the city of Chicago. If you haven't been down there, 29th and Halsted, hang out there for a while, bring your kids, bring your family, bring your parents, just walk around. And not a drop of water goes into the combined sewer system. Not a drop. And so now there's miles of trail that people walk through. And there's this fishing pond at the bay, which is stocked, by the way. You can go down there and catch fish, real fish. The folks in Bridgeport use this extensively for all kinds of things. And it's just one of these places that is pretty magical once you get down there. And even during the wintertime, these places are used. So we talk a lot about how, the park spaces and these public spaces that we create really serves as identity for the community. This building used to be owned by the University of Illinois, Chicago, UIC, as their, I think they had a clinic here or something. And it ended up getting torn down. We did these 3 designs for the Park District to say, and go out to the community. And we were like, okay, take a vote. The one on the right, this one ended up winning by 1 vote. And we were like, ooh, cool. we can get this thing done. And here again, another park, not a drop of water goes into the combined sewer system. And how do we do this? We do this with permeable paving. We do this with these underground wells. We do this with a lot of methods that are, that we've always had, but nobody ever really kind of uses. And here again, the end product actually turned out like what we had rendered. This captures and infiltrates all runoff from up to a 100-year, 24-hour rain event. Reduces water by 1.13 million gallons per year with this low flow misting fountain. Okay, so the Park District has these water, these splash pads that they have. That's how much water goes through these things. And we ended up doing this misting system, which obviously saved. This is 10 years ago, $4,200 10 years ago. So now, obviously it's more. Reduced surface temperatures by over 25 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it has become this place that kids go, but their kids' parents go, and the kids' grandparents go. And one of the things that's really funny about that is that this is the first time this playground equipment came in. And playground equipment manufacturers, they like to separate the 2 to 5 years old to the 5 to 12 years old. They say, these kids can't play together, et cetera, et cetera. It's just so that they can sell more playground equipment. We were like, yeah, forget about that. Let's just like put it all together. And we start seeing like older kids like helping the younger kids up. It's a lot of fun. The dog friendly area is super popular, but here we go. It's this misting piece that really has been the highlight of the park. The sculpture that we had designed actually turns out that it is now the West Loop, their identity. So they put it on all their stationery and stuff like that. So you all remember the pandemic. It was tough. It was tough. And then on top of that, you know, the George Floyd killing. And you remember what the city was like back then. And it was chaotic. There was like all kinds of stuff going on. And one of the things that happened was, if you remember North Michigan Avenue, everybody was boarding up their stores, their storefronts. And I woke up one night and I was like, what are they doing with all that plywood? You know, I was like, that's like, and it turns out that they take that plywood and they haul it away, they put it in a dumpster and away it goes. I'm like, that's some good plywood. So, you know, get together a bunch of people and we go to Rolex and Tiffany's and can we have your plywood? You know, put it in the truck. And we went down to 75th Street. And this is the middle of the pandemic. And as you recall, you know, the businesses were suffering, everybody's suffering. And we took this stretch of area from Calumet to Indiana along 75th Street. And what I completely kind of forgot about is, well, I'll tell you about this in a second, but we ended up taking that plywood and building this boardwalk. And when I say we, I mean that we got the what is it, the Chatham Association to recruit kids out of the neighborhood. And we had Black contractors out there teaching these kids how to do these skills that they're going to need for the rest of their life. But they're simple construction skills. And for 12 weeks, we ended up doing this, taking up these 2 blocks, kind of stealing parking spaces because, you know, we'd go out there at 6 a.m, put down these cones, you know. CDOT wasn't too happy because, well, they didn't realize it until this thing was up. But then they gave us a permit. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. What I didn't realize is the food down here is unbelievable. So Lem's Barbecue is down there. If you haven't been to Lem's, check it out. Brown Sugar Bakery is down there. You know, I ended up eating my way through this entire project. It was terrible. But, you know, this is one of these things where, you know, just by willpower, you can make a lot of things happen. And the impact that it made for this quarter was that these businesses started to see more revenue come in. And we polled this and it was like up to 30% increase in revenue because of this boardwalk, because of these outdoor spaces that people could sit and they could engage with each other outside and have a good time and, you know, feel safe. So anyway, that's just, you know, another lesson of willpower. I'm going to go through, I think, 2 more. You all remember what the Riverwalk used to look like? It's pretty decrepit. So one of the administrations, I'm going to not name who, gives us a call and says, hey, Ernie, we want this thing designed and built before I leave office. And I was like, sir, it's November. You leave office in May. And we ended up, you know, designing this thing. And this is like on the tail end of the hardscape, the Riverwalk that over by City Winery. But we wanted to make this much more park-like. So we started to develop these ideas on how to make this with a lot more vegetation, but also have this opportunity for vendors to come down there and open up their shops. And they are doing extremely well. So, you know, this time came along and we started building. It was amazing to see this kind of evolve to where it's at. And everybody down there is thriving right now. This is one of the, you know, places that tourists now are all coming to. And it's a wonderful area, and there are places to sit, and there are places to eat, and places to get to know each other. And so, we had a lot of fun with this and kind of developing these ideas on how people kind of congregate with each other. The world is turning. But we're dealing with a lot of stuff. We're dealing with wildfires. We're dealing with this flooding issue. And so we're lucky because we're here in Chicago, but on the West Coast, try buying property insurance. If you live in Florida, try buying property insurance for your $3 million estate, because your property is worthless, basically, because if that burns down, you're done. And we're starting to see more and more of this. I mean, the tornadoes come through there. What was it, last week? We saw this dust storm. That was weird. I'm just like, oh, what are we in for? We have some other things, though, that we're dealing with, though, as well. Things that keep us up at night. And these are things that we continue to struggle with. The defunding of all kinds of things. And I'm not trying to, make you all depressed. But it is kind of dire as to what we're dealing with right now, this economic uncertainty. The price of eggs, really? Think about this. A year ago, what were the price of eggs? Like $1.30, I think, a dozen. Now, 1 dozen eggs per customer, please. DEI is under fire, We're lucky that we're in Chicago right now, for right now. But I'm going to tell you, it's all coming, and we're on a bunch of committees talking about this nationwide. Our kids are getting stupider and stupider. And it's a pity to see what's going on. And our seniors, as we get older, and I'm pretty close to that age, I'm really worried about this. Am I going to be able to afford healthcare? And, if I catch some sort of disease, there's no research going on it anymore. So we're getting is this getting really depressing? You all are like, oh man, Ernie, why didn't I come see this? There is more food over there. But we are dealing with a whole lot of issues that have a crisis, and it's all because of this megalomania. People who think they're just they can run the world. And this is some of the things that we're dealing with. So, I put this thing up. By the way, you notice there's no women here? I got to say that if there were women here, we wouldn't have this problem. This says it all, right? What are we doing? We're just minions here. But I'll tell you what we're doing as landscape architects. We're rethinking our profession. And, 15 years ago, we would never have community engagement. We just designed stuff and say, here you go, that's what you get. And now it's more about engaging with the community, talking to folks who live there, who have businesses there. And, what do you want to see in your community before we start even drawing? And these are some of the things that happen. There's a vacant lot down on 63rd Street that in one summer turned it into this incubator space that folks are and we're starting to deal with the affordable housing crisis. I always have this issue: affordable housing is not affordable in any means. I mean, the cost of doing it is ridiculously crazy, and a lot of that actually, so I serve on the mayor's Cut the Red Tape committee, and one of the things that we were talking about is that developers get their funding for affordable housing from a lot of different sources, right? The state, the city, federally, funds, but they fill out the same paperwork for it. The same questions come up for each one of these applications for the grants. And so there's this duplicity that is raising those costs and the inability to actually get anything done. So hopefully, AI will help us, although I'm a little scared. You saw the Sun Times thing about the books that don't exist. But we're, as landscape architects, we're designing these things. This is Scape in New York, who is doing this thing, not only the resiliency plan for the coast in New York, in Manhattan, but also down in New Orleans as well. They're doing this plan to do recycle oyster shells. And it's really amazing to see how that's kind of building up that resilience to the wave action that's going on down there. Kongjun Yu, who is a Chinese Harvard GSD educated landscape architect, went back to China and he starts doing these sponge cities, which soak up the rainwater, but also recharges during the times that the rain's not there. SWA in the West Coast is doing these things to mitigate the wildfires. And, slowly that's starting to build up, but the wildfires are moving very, very quickly. I mean, I think I saw last year, you remember the wildfires through Canada were like smoking us out. But then I saw this last year that Long Island had wildfires. I was like, what's going on? It's kind of crazy. So my whole thing is, where do we want to spend our 10,000 hours?
Even though I wasn't raised in Chinatown, I was raising my family here in Chinatown. My kids learned to ride their bike on a busy sidewalk. And I had friends that grew up in Chinatown. They would play volleyball using a fence at the schoolyard. And so basically the sidewalk was their playground for many years. Seeing how so many generations of kids kind of grew up without a park, I think it's something the community really needed. It was probably the first time that the community really got together and asked the city, we lost our park. It's time to restore it and rebuild it.
My dad, along with some of his friends, wanted to expand Chinatown. The Santa Fe Railroad was willing to sell some land to my dad and the company that he started. And along with that, he wanted to see if there could be a park as part of that project.
How do we start to really connect with the cultural aspects of this park? That's where we really started with this whole effort, was looking at classical and traditional Chinese garden design. You keep on discovering these landscapes as you move through these courtyards and these series of courtyards.
Our park is kind of bisected in the middle by the 18th Street Bridge. Those walls under 18th Street were always either filled with graffiti or just painted over. Raised enough money to paint 3 of the 4 walls that are under 18th Street. It just represented that, even though we're from different places, we could be one.
When you got to the edge of the river, there was a 15-foot drop from land to the river. And people do gravitate towards water. Part of this was carving away a much more gentler sloping edge that people could access the river even easier. There's this whole balancing the site of digging out areas, yet taking that soil and being able to mound it up and create better topography.
I think that there's such a weird trajectory of what happens when there's a general lack of places for healthy activity, but also for a sense of safety. We tried to hold this very special event a couple years ago where we invited the community to plant native plants into the park. There was a sense of community. There were so many people that they were helping each other out. That is what a true community is all about.
We are in a field that that historically has been for rich people, doing the estates and English gardens and French gardens, and to transform that into something that the everyday person can experience, I think is really important. Good design and the quality of design should be for everybody. Not only the quality of design in the industry, but the social aspect of it. How does this start to impact other people's lives? So when we do a park on the west side of Chicago that used to be drug infested and with needles all over the place, and that kid, and we put in a new playground, and 20 years from now, that kid says to his friend, hey, remember that park that we were at and we did this and we dreamed about this? You impacted that kid's life. And that's powerful to me. That's something that I am very passionate about.
This park is making a difference in people's lives.
Thank you, folks. And thank you for all the hard work that you all do. And I'm here at MWRD. This city would not be here without you all. So thank you for all of your work.
Thank you, Ernie, for your special presentation on the iconic footprint that landscape architecture has in the city of Chicago. I know that throughout the presentation, I saw a few favorites for us at MWRD. The south branch of the Chicago River is very important to us and important to Pington Park. For me personally, I'm from the suburbs, but it's where I take my family that come from Mexico when we travel, and I want to show them our wonderful city and how diverse it is. It's where I take them. It's where I remember as a single mom when I couldn't afford to take my son on a big fancy vacation, we took the water taxi and I took him to another part that made him feel that he was just in this outside world. So it's very meaningful to me too. Thank you for sharing your personal story on that. I saw the Riverwalk East, which is something we got to see a couple weeks ago when we opened our Centennial Fountain, and just speaks to what the Riverwalk has become and the relationship that we as a city and as a region have changed with our river. You can tell who's old school Chicagoan by their relationship to the city, but you can also tell how that has changed through time because of the investments that we all have made as Chicagoans to our river. And of course, the space to grow. Such an important project to all of us as commissioners on how we can bring green infrastructure and build collaborative partnership with government. I want to, on behalf of the MWRD and the Board of Commissioners, present to you a resolution and award recognizing your dedication to serving the city of Chicago through landscape architecture and being a dedicated and inspiring Asian American leader in the state of Illinois. In closing, MWRD recognizes Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month because as an agency, we value the diversity of our workforce, ideas, and we want to create opportunities. I want to also thank our Office of Public Affairs and staff for coordinating this program, and our caterer, Laos to Your House. You provided us with the opportunity to try delicious Laotian cuisine. I tried a bite of every single little thing, and I am stuffed, and it was all very delicious. Lastly, as you can see, we have today these lovely bamboo plants up front. Bamboo is a symbol of strength and continuous growth. It is one of the most sustainable materials with multiple uses. We all know, of course, it's panda food, but you can also make rafts, construction medicine, clothing, and much more. The bamboo plants also grow on interconnected root systems, which means it helps prevent soil erosion. Much like today's theme, the bamboo symbolizes resiliency and building a strong, positive future.